Good afternoon. I get asked often, more than often, how to write hypotheses. People ask me, Steve, I have these hypotheses, I have these ideas. How the heck do I get them on paper? Okay. And what's really cool about it, getting them on paper is not that hard. Just knowing which style or which format to use for your hypothesis is the tricky part. We're going to go over that today and the write up and stuff like this. So when you're done, you have a little toolkit as to build out your hypotheses. How does that sound? Good. Now, this document will be attached below the video, and as you can see, the top of this document has a link, has 4 different links to 4 different things. These are all very helpful stuff about writing hypotheses. The first link is actually very, very good. The second one is just as good, but sometimes a little harder to read. 3, I have found to be useful. It has good background information. And 4, yeah, give it a shot. We'll see. But you're going to find that these 4 links, in addition to the course reading, will be very, very helpful when it comes to thinking about null and alternative hypotheses. Now, the first thing you need to realize, a hypothesis is just not one thing. It's a pair of things. It's a null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis. And in general, the null hypothesis is exactly as it sounds. Null means nothing, nada, nil, none. That means the null hypothesis is the hypothesis saying there is no relationship between variable A and variable B. Variable A and B, they don't talk. They don't care about each other. They ignore each other. They run away from each other. That's the null hypothesis. There is no relationship between 2 variables. The alt, or the alternative, you're going to hear me use the word alt a lot because it's shorter than alternative over and over again, is the opposite. It is, there is a relationship. Now, why do we write them like this? When we get our data and we do a statistical test, we want to make sure that our statistical test is definitive. It covers all the possible outcomes. And when you get down to it, either having a relationship or not having a relationship is it. There is no, oh, maybe there's one. No, there's either a relationship or there isn't. Okay, so it's exhaustive. The other thing is that they're disjoint. What I mean by that is this. There is never an instance of anything where you have a relationship at the same time as not having a relationship. That makes absolutely no sense. Think about it. Does that make sense in any part of your life? Oh, yeah, it is related, but it's not. And we're good with that. No, that makes absolutely 0 sense whatsoever. That would make life extremely difficult. So we also know they're disjoint. You can't have them at the same time. They're also exhaustive. So that really covers all the bases. In our statistical analysis will tell us, hey, there either is a relationship or there's not, definitively, as a result. Now, how do we write these things up to get ready for the stats things? This is what we're going to cover here. Okay? The generic template for writing up a hypothesis is actually a lot simpler than you think. Everyone makes this really hard, and it doesn't need to be hard. So here you go. This template appears in the top box up here. The null is related by the number 0, or the null symbol here. This is the null hypothesis saying there is no relationship between A and B. Okay, that's cool. Now, what does this little HO1 thing mean? Let's go read this so in English. Okay, so what we got to be kind of smart here is you read it backwards because why? Because we're scientists, we're statisticians, we do stuff to sound really smart and impressive. Okay, welcome to being a geek. So what we do is read this in reverse. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bigger too so we can actually see it. Okay, so we're going to zoom in on this thing. Okay, I think it's big enough, at least I hope it is. This 1 means first. Okay, duh, that's not so bad. 0 means null. And H means hypothesis. So this is the first null hypothesis. Aha! Using a little bit of logic and some brain power, the one below it is the first alternative hypothesis. And you're not surprised because this says there is a relationship between the variables. So our goal is to somehow sit down and fill this out. and twist it to what we want it to do. So that's your template. And here's a really simple example, okay? There is no relationship between the number of clouds in the sky and the temperature in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That's a null hypothesis. That is the first null hypothesis. Then the alt is the opposite. Okay, kind of duh. Okay, there is a relationship between the number of clouds in the sky and the temperature in Ann Arbor, Michigan. First alt hypothesis. Cool thing is, they're exhaustive. There is no other possibility. This is it. There either is a relationship or there's not. And they're disjoint. You can't have them both at the same time. Therefore, this is a null in alt hypothesis pair. You're going to be creating these. These are what people call hypotheses. And when you do is you get data and in software, and you go over to SPSS or R or JASP or MoveMe or whatever software you use, and you grind through the data to figure out which one of these things is the hypothesis you want to believe. That's called the hypothesis test. We sit down and we do a test to tell us whether we reject the null hypothesis. Basically saying, hey, null hypothesis for my data ain't right. Therefore, I go to the alternative and buy into that one. Or we fail to reject the null. Okay, sometimes our data will say, hey, we failed to reject the null. We cannot cancel out or get rid of the null. So we're stuck with the no relationship thing. So what we do is we write these hypotheses, we go out and collect the data, and we do a test in whatever software we do. Okay, that depends on what type of software you like to use and where you work and who sponsors what and that sort of stuff, to figure out whether we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Now let's go look at some examples. Okay, let's say you want to test for correlation. What we do is we just basically swap out the word relationship and put correlation in. The null is there is no correlation between variable A and variable B. And the alt is there is a correlation. That is not so bad. So if you want to do a correlational analysis, this is how you write up the null and the alt. Now let's go see if you wanted to figure out whether one variable depends upon the other. This is very useful for categorical variables like colors, red, green, blue, or high, medium, and low. Categorical variables that aren't really numbers, but they have bins that you can use. For example, variable A does not depend on variable B. That's the null hypothesis for dependency. The alt hypothesis is variable A depends on variable B. And if you were to collect the data and do it in SPSS or whatever software, this is usually your chi-squared test of independence. This allows you to figure out whether two categorical variables are related to each other. If you want to do a prediction is what everyone calls a regression. You plot your data up, get the best fit line, the regression line, and use that line to predict anything within reason. If you want to do something like that, this is how you write up it up. Here we go. The null hypothesis is variable A does not predict variable B. Remember, the null is the nothing thing, so it does not. The alt is variable A predicts variable B. You write these out, you collect the data, you do the analysis in SPSS or R or whatever. Excel does not do it. Early morning, not well enough anyways. And you find out whether you reject the null or not. You either reject the null or fail to reject the null. And we'll know if we have a model that allows us to predict. And that model will be the regression line, the best fit line. So if you want to do a regression or a prediction, this is how you write up your null and alt for your hypotheses. Now, you might be a little more adventurous. You might be sitting there thinking, I want to do something a little more evil. Now, these next two things are for you. Here we go. Okay, we're going to scroll down. And the cool thing is that both techniques use exactly the same thing, but different philosophies. Here we go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because otherwise we're going to destroy the screen here. Okay, this first one here, this diagram you see here is what mediation is all about. Okay, and I'm going to tell you a story. Let's assume the letter A represents a kid at a Halloween party. And let's assume B is all the candy at the Halloween party. As you can see, the kid and the bowl of candy are definitely connected through this arrow right here. That kid is going to make a beeline right for that candy like there's no tomorrow. Welcome to kids. Okay. Meanwhile, there's a parent. Hopefully, there's somebody at the party that's in charge of things. We'll find out. And the parent could control how much candy the kid gets. The parent's going to say, okay, you can have some candy, but it's only going to be so much. Because, I don't want you bouncing off the walls when I take you home. Duh. In this case, the parent, which is ME, is mediating the relationship between the kid and the bowl of candy. That's it. That's all mediation is. Mediation is an influencer. Influences what happens in this arrow by somehow controlling the process. That's what mediators do. That's all a mediator, it's all it is. And the write-up is actually very, very easy. We're going to go up and look at it. Here we go. We're going to say variable mediates. Okay, that's what ME means. The mediating variable does not mediate the relationship between A and B. So, for example, parents do not mediate the relationship between kids and candy. Okay. And the opposite is the alt. Parents mediate the relationship between kids and candy. Not so bad. Now let's go do MO. That's moderation. Moderation is a little stricter, okay? You can think of moderation as like a special case of mediation, okay? And in a way, we can use the same story again. So we're going to do this. Okay, we're going to scroll down here, okay? This little block diagram is what moderation is all about. A is the kid, just like before. B is a candy jar. The parent stands in the middle and tells the kid, you got to get through me to get to that candy. You ain't getting any candy. I don't care how hard you try. Or the parent can say, well, you're only going to get candy if I approve it. Tough. In this case, the moderator, the parent, acts as a gatekeeper, not as an influencer, but like a switch that says you either get the candy or you don't. Or good luck getting through me to get to it. Okay? This harsher, very strict form of mediation, where the parent is the absolute judge in whether the kid gets the candy or not, is called moderation. And the write-up is exactly the same. We're going to scroll up here. And we're just going to say it because now you're starting to get the hang of this. Ready? Okay, here we go. Parents do not moderate the relationship between kids and candy, or parents do moderate the relationship between kids and candy. There you go. How do you know which one you want? You have to look at your worldview. Remember how we talked about this earlier in the other form? And ask yourself, which one of these really fits my worldview? Only you know. You may not even use these. You may not have a mediation or moderation. You just may be one of the usual sort of hypothesis tests or some variant of these. So that's how you write them up. Now let's go see the APA part of writing these buggers up. Here we go. We're going to scroll down, and down here, you're going to see this. And the write-up is very, very easy. Okay? No paragraphs, no long pages, literally almost like a list in a screwy way. All you got to write is this. Here we go. The study will test the following hypotheses, : You write down your first null hypotheses and you put it here. For example, temperature in Oakland okay. Coming up with just something because I need to. And by the way, I do have a cup of coffee, and I live very close to Oakland. So the alt is very easy to do too. We got to make it, grammatically correct, duh. There we go. That's my first null and alt hypothesis. The temperature in Oakland, California does not correlate to the cost of my coffee. God, I hope it doesn't, because coffee is starting to get expensive. And if it does, that means Oakland's going to get really hot really soon. The temperature, and my alt is, the temperature in Oakland correlates to the cost of coffee. So that's your null and your alt. And all you do is you just write them in here. You just plug them in there. And if you have 3 hypotheses, you do this 3 times, okay? Let's go see how to fix the numbering so you know how to do this too. So we're going to undo all this so you can see a nice clean template. Otherwise, it gets really messy. We're going to zoom in. Just like before. Oops. Oh. This is where you got to be really careful. This is what happens when you have typos. Okay, now this will work. Your first pair of hypotheses will be your first null hypothesis and your first alt hypothesis. There you go. Your second set, the second null hypothesis, will be the second 2 null 0 hypothesis, H. Done. Then you're going to have the second alt hypothesis. And since Word is complaining about spelling, this is driving me nuts. You'll learn that Word is a little bit annoying on these things after a while, but it's okay. So we'll just ignore it, just tell it to say it's okay. For your third hypothesis, this is your third null hypothesis and your third alt hypothesis. And you keep going on, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And when you write up your hypotheses, it's literally just this sentence here, pairs of nulls and alts, numbered accordingly, and that's it. No explanations, no paragraphs, no citing, no story, no nothing. That is how you APA format a hypothesis. If you want to get even fancier, you can even do this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us out of here, okay? Bold. You can even put the word hypotheses as a level 1 heading on top. That's kind of nice. And also fix the, oops, not that one. This one, the indent, so it's actually centered. And there you go. So now you have an APA formatted hypothesis section. And that's all there's to it. So when you write these things out, you're just going to be filling in these things here. And, you know, making the numbers correct and so forth. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you learned a lot on writing these up. And remember, it all comes down to the generic template up here. A hypothesis test is 2 statements, the null and the alternative hypothesis. The null is the no relationship, the nada, the nil, the none, the null. Nothing is there. It ain't there hypothesis. The no relationship. The alt is the opposite. There is a relationship. And together, they cover all possible outcomes. There either is a relationship or there's not. And they're also disjoint. They can't be true at the same time. You cannot have a relationship and a no relationship condition at the same moment in time. It just doesn't work that way. The universe just doesn't happen to work that way. And the real trick is to sit down, take this template, fill it in, and twist this wording here into what you need. And you can have them all down here. If you want to look for a correlation, instead of using the word relationship, use the word correlation. If you want to look at categorical variables and how they depend on each other, you got to twist the language a little more, but the overall gist is the same. Same thing with regression or prediction. Okay? It's the same structure, except this phrasing here gets tweaked a little bit. Same thing for mediation and moderation. Remember, moderation is just a very strict form of mediation. It's the strictest possible form. If you ever get confused on what these diagrams mean, just think of the Halloween party with the kid, the candy, and the parent. You have to ask yourself, in my worldview, is my parent kind of permissive and say, yeah, you can have some candy, but I'm going to keep an eye on you? Or is the parent super strict and saying, you're only going to get candy if you go through me. I'm your gatekeeper to that candy jar. How do you know which one is right? You don't. Your worldview gives you a hint at which one to go look at. And when real life, you write up the hypotheses, you collect the data, you do the analysis, then you find out whether your guess was right or not. If you're right, good. If you're wrong, good. If you're wrong, it's good because no one else will ever waste their time to figure out, this is not the right thing. So having a quote unquote bad outcome, realizing, oh, my hypothesis wasn't right, is still a good thing because it saves the community from making the same mistake. It keeps us moving in the right direction. And that's it. That's hypothesis testing in a nutshell. Well, at least the write-up part. That's not the statistics part. But there you go. And I'll attach this document right below this video, and I hope this helps out. If you have any questions, ask. I'll see you later.